Hi, I'm Neil from Forge Ways, and today we're going to run through some basic fire lighting. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is to start to find my kindling. So I want some dead, dry, and preferably hanging in the tree, not lying on the ground wood. So in around here I've got some willow that's got some dead branches. So I'm snapping it off and it makes this lovely crackling sound, a bit like a fire, if you can hear that. So that's what I'm looking for. If it's got any leaves on or it's been sat on the floor, it's going to have some moisture. So always listen for that snapping sound. So here we are at quite an old veteran birch tree. This is typical bark. It's sort of this light grey to white colour with these lines that are called lenticels. This tree is fantastic because it contains something called betulin, an oil in its branches and in its bark, and betulin makes our fire lighting job a lot easier. Okay, so here we are at a younger birch tree. So you can see it's got this telltale whitish grey bark. It's quite obvious on this tree. And even though it's really young, we've still got some branches that it's shedding that are perfect for the kindling. And this one, if you can pick it up on the camera, has got this fine bark that's just peeling, and I won't harm the tree to peel off this feathery fine bits of bark, and this will just help our fire lighting. So next we'll go on and look at alternatives to if we aren't surrounded by birch trees. What to do if you're not surrounded by birch trees. Here we've moved into a bit of a plantation forestry. It's mainly Sitka spruce and some hemlock trees, but when the trees grow close together and they get shaded out, they get lots of their lower branches die off naturally, and these make equally good kindling. They snap, that nice crackly sound that we mentioned, easy, and then even these finer little ends work as that thin sort of starting kindling. Literally take me minutes to walk through a patch of trees and gather 2 big bundles of branches to start a fire. Okay, so we've just come back from collecting our material, and our first thing is to sort it out into sizes. So I've got two bundles of the really thinnest stuff, almost toothpick size. And then we're going to move on. I've got pencil size. Then I've got sort of finger to thumb thickness pieces. And then finally, I've got my sort of proper firewood, if you like, on from there. So just before we light the fire, we need to talk a little bit about site selection. So today, I'm in my woods and I light a lot of fires here, so I've chosen to use this sort of sawn off barbecue, so I don't mark the ground. But if you were to be lighting on the ground, then we want to clear away any leaf litter or anything that might catch fire, and not light on sort of deep peaty ground, as the fire might travel through the ground. So clear the ground. We're going to look up above us, and we're going to make sure there's no really low branches that the heat column from the fire could catch alight, and we're going to look all around us and just make sure there's nothing that the fire can jump onto. I carry a bucket of water next to me for sort of fire safety, especially if I'm teaching children to sort of deal with any quick burns, or if I need to put a patch of the ground out that looks like it might be about to catch fire. But yeah, so we're pretty much ready to go. So we're going to talk about kindling. Sorry, tinder, not kindling. So general things, I light a lot of fires with man-made things. So cotton wool is a really good one, and I use a lot of these at the moment. So these are compressed sort of cardboard sort of cubes, if you like, and if I fluff the surface of these up, these will easily take a spark, and they're great for lighting, especially if you're lighting a lot of fires for groups, or you're lighting a Kelly kettle, something like that. Other things I've got the seed head, a rose bay willow herb. I've got some horsehoof fungus. Now that can be made into something called amadou, which is like a light fluffy material, so a bit like the cotton wool, but that'll take a spark. I've got another type of fungus called King Alfred's cake. This takes a spark and this smoulders for a long time, so it's really good to put in a tinder bundle, like a nest that you can then blow into flames. I've got a bag of collected birch bark. Some bits a little bit thicker than this light fluffy stuff that we collected earlier. And then there's things like char cloth that can be made over the fire that'll also take a spark, which is probably an old tea towel that's then charred inside this tin in a fire. But yeah, it's a whole nother video, maybe for another time, on tinders. But today we're going to use cotton wool. So just before I'm going to light, I've made a little platform of twigs here inside my fire pit. Well, you do the same on the ground. It's just to lift yourself off any damp ground. And although it's quite a nice day today, the sun might come out in a minute. I'm going to try and position so my back or my body is blocking any wind, but there isn't much today, so I could pretty much light from any angle. So I'm going to use this fire steel. You could use matches and lighters, there's no easy way, but I like to carry these. I do a lot of canoeing, so these light even when they're wet, so if it's in my buoyancy aid or in my pocket, and it's always a reliable way to light. So cotton wool, I'm giving this a really nice fluff, sort of opening it all up so there's lots of surface area and it's a lot easier to take the spark. So with this cube, yeah, we'll fluff the surface up. With the birch bark, we'd scrape the surface of that so we're getting this fluffy sort of texture. Put that on the centre of our little pad, and then using my fire steel, I'm going to try and brace my hand a little bit so I'm nice and stable to be able to strike it onto that cotton wool. There you go, a couple of strikes, and just as it's going, I'm going to get some of those finer bits of the birch bark. You see they start to flame up. And then I can get my 2 long toothpick sized bundles of stick, and I can just hold those off the flame. I'm not pushing it down and smothering the flames, I'm just holding them, and I'm nice and safe at a distance, and that's starting to quickly take light. And then we can hold our next bundle on, and then there you go, that's already going nicely. And then just let it come up into flame, and then we can add our next bundle on top. I'm going to have to say there was no wind. Look, the wind started since I've been sat here. I just have to move back out of the way of the flames. Okay, so that's just starting to catch now. The smaller stuff, and then just gently we can move on when those pencil pieces start taking, like they're just starting to catch in around here. We can now add some of the slightly larger stuff, and then we'll let that take, and then yeah, we just keep going up and up in size until we've got a fire of the right size that we need. But it's quite a bomb-proof way of lighting a fire if you always remember to have 2 good bundles of that really thin dry stuff. Well, that's the basics of fire lighting for today, and if you need any more information then you can contact me. I'm Neil Hopkins at Forge Ways. or obviously Small Woods Association or Coed Lleol here in Wales. And yeah, hope to see you on another film soon.